George Warren and James Gamble operated a sawmill at Warren Mills, today known as Warren's, from 1868 to 1874. In 1874, that partnership was changed to Frank G. Warren, son of George, and William A. Barber, but retained the name George Warren and Company. By the late 1880s, having harvested trees around Warren Mills for 20 years, the owners decided to construct a satellite sawmill closer to their remaining timber holdings. Transportation distances were more critical to the Warren Company because they used wagons for transporting their logs to the mill in the warm months and sleighs during the winter. Their new mill, Zeda, was constructed 9 miles due north of their old mill and was under construction before the Wisconsin Valley Division Railroad began to build its spur to the proposed site of the Goodyear sawmill on Morrison Creek. Of the area's 3 main sawmills, the Zeda operation was the least dependent on the railroad, since it could have shipped all its rough-sawn lumber to Warren Mills by wagon. Here we see about 6 wagons of lumber heading for their main sawmill. While the Goodyear and McKenna mills used railroads to bring their logs to the mill, Zeda was mainly supplied with logs hauled on horse-pulled sleighs. This limited them at first to winter hauling, because the area between their mill and their timber was too swampy to use wagons. These sleighs are ready to be unloaded into the mill pond. The Zeda mill also used tramways, and starting in 1892, the Goodyear's logging trains supplied them with logs. Here we see a lengthwise photo of the Zeda mill pond. There are 2 log unloading ramps on the right side of the pond. Notice the upright boards coming out of the water in the extreme left center of this photo. The same boards are in front of the horses in this photograph and were a part of a system to keep part of the pond from freezing over. This photo was taken of the same unloading area from across the pond. 2 sleighs are being unloaded, and on the far side of the load, closest to the mill, is a large log of at least 3 feet in diameter. Its end is visible between the 2 men working to unload the sleigh. In the center of this photo, we see a catwalk out into the mill pond, and on the right side, the refuse removal system. In front of the mill, alongside the gangway, which pulled the logs into the mill, was a small building they jokingly called the hotel. This was where the man responsible to push logs onto the gangway could get out of the weather. The man in the middle may be George Warren. Note the box on the sleigh runners in the center of the photo. It's a large watertight box that was used to sprinkle water on the logging roads at night to make an ice road for the log sleighs. Here we see it from a different angle. We also notice an upright cylinder with steam rising off it, indicating it was the apparatus used to condense the steam from the boiler for heating the pond. The heated water was forced through feeder lines laid out from the cylinder on the bottom of the pond. In our next photo, we see the entire mill and the railroad loading dock, with a flat car being loaded with lumber. Here, the photographer was standing on Zeda's Dam over McKenna Creek, which connected the sawmill with the town. We get a good view of the refuse conveyor. What is the small roofed structure over the middle of the conveyor system? It could be where one conveyor belt or chain ended, allowing smaller refuse like sawdust to fall into suspended bins for dumping into wagons, as in this photo. As was true of all the main sawmills in this area, Zeda used a conveyor chain or gangway to move the logs to the second story of the mill, where the main saw blades were located. On the second floor, the logs were run through the main saws. The head sawyer determined the best cuts to get the most boards from the logs. From here, the boards were cut to standard lengths and shipped to Warren Mills for drying and planing. Here we see the mill crew out on the pond's dam. The mill pond control structure appears just behind the front row of men. The man with suspenders, front left, is standing by the planks used to regulate the mill pond's water depth. The pole in his right hand, with a hook on the end, was used to pull the planks when lowering the water. This is another photo of the same group of men and boys by the mill. In this photo, taken in 1893, 6 of the 30 men are wearing baseball caps. Newspaper reports of the day do mention baseball games being played